Du High Level Committee, le COVID-19, qui est présidé par le Premier ministre lui-même. Et si, au nom de la transparence, Premier ministre pour initier une enquête, l'ban ministère et ban organisation qui est impliquée. Nawaz Nombek, c'est un dossier brûlant qui peut faire polémique depuis quelques semaines et qui est capable encore de faire ban étincelle aujourd'hui.
Oui, Priscilla, avant qu'il nous cause d'éventuelles étincelles, nous vous dire que c'est une séance marathon qui peut atteindre nous aujourd'hui encore une fois à l'Assemblée nationale parce que d'abord pour introduire en première lecture le Real Estate Agent Authority Bill et le Supplementary Appropriation 2018-2019 Bill qui pour introduire, ce qui veut dire qu'il peut y avoir un débat après l'OSA Bill là, donc ce qui veut dire qu'il peut y avoir encore une ou deux séances parlementaires. Et en troisième lecture, pour bien vote le Supplementary Appropriation 2017-2018 Bill. Donc pour vote 2017-2018 et pour introduire 2018-2019 Zodi. Et puis, bien sûr, débat pour continuer le Finance Bill et le Politique Committee Stage et pour adopter le Finance Bill qui, comme on connaît, donne force de loi à une mesure budgétaire. Et puis, bien sûr, pour la suite et la fin de la motion de blâme contre le Speaker de l'Assemblée nationale, une motion qui inscrit au nom du leader de l'opposition. Et aujourd'hui, donc, on a une grosse pointure qui peut intervenir tard dans la soirée, sa motion contre le Speaker. Cela dit, nous venons donc à la PNQ du jour qui consacrait sans surprise à l'affaire des médicaments. C'est un sujet au Finjali Priscilla qui peut faire polémique depuis plusieurs semaines. L'opposition peut cibler le emergency procurement. C'est une pratique qui existait depuis tout temps, mais qui peut faire polémique le fait que pendant le lockdown, le gouvernement, sous le emergency procurement, finalisait plusieurs contrats qui a jusqu'à 1,5 milliard d'euros. Et quand le ministre de la Santé dépose la liste de bénéficiaires de ce même contrat-là, c'est là que finit la polémique parce que l'opposition peut dire qu'il y a une compagnie qui n'est pas spécialisée dans l'achat de médicaments et d'équipements médicaux, qui décroche un contrat à hauteur de plusieurs millions d'euros. Ne pas pour donner nom, détail, ça finit faire beaucoup de polémique, l'eau, ça plateau la même. Et là, l'opposition peut carrément cibler le emergency procurement parce que et la question adressée, qui fait la question adressée au Premier ministre? Normalement, emergency procurement il passe dans le Conseil des ministres. Ministre, gouvernement, bien au courant, bien approuve un emergency procurement. Et Conseil des ministres présidé par le Premier ministre. Et puis, il y a le High Level Committee, le COVID-19, qui est présidé par nul autre que le Premier ministre. D'ailleurs, la question de Orvin Boulel concerne l'implication du High Level Committee COVID-19 présidé par le Premier ministre, Law Emergency Procurement. Et puis, deuxième question du leader de l'opposition, il a envie qu'on ait en guise de transparence, si Premier ministre pour initier une enquête, différents ministères et organisations qui involvent dans sa Emergency Procurement là. Maintenant, Premier ministre logiquement pour dire qu'il y a démarre une enquête de l'achat de médicaments et d'équipements médicaux, mais l'opposition, comme on connaît, n'a pas fait confiance à l'ICAC et moi pense l'opposition pour insister pour une commission d'enquête ou bien une fact-finding committee, sa polémique là. Et on a raison pour dire qu'il y a une PNQ très chaude en perspective.
En tout cas, c'est à suivre dans quelques petites minutes, 11h presque 29. Et lors de la PMQT, donc deux questions de Rajesh Bhagwan, lors deux advisors du Premier ministre, zot salaire, zot ban allocation, mais aussi ban board lors lesquels zot siégé. Une interpellation de la députée Johanna Béranger lors l'introduction de la langue des signes lors de ban bulletin télévisé et lors de ban débat parlementaire. Une question député Osman Mahomed, entre autres, donc l'efficacité de ban caméra Safe City pour track ban dimoun qui n'a pas porte masque, entre autres, qui peut retenir l'attention Nawaz.
Et aussi, Priscilla, il y a une question très intéressante du docteur Faradoumir adressée au Premier ministre. J'ai envie qu'on ait à côté fin arrivé avec sa mesure budgétaire qui dit qui, avec 1 million de dollars américains un étranger capable de gagner un passeport mauricien. Si annonce ça dans le discours budgétaire 2018-2019, ça fait faire beaucoup de polémique. L'opposition finit carrément dire qu'il peut vendre passeport avec un étranger. Et c'est vrai qu'il depuis ça, pas de et sa question-là, il est inscrit en notre prioritaire. Troisième question, et donc la question pourrait être répondue par le Premier ministre. Nous avons connaître si c'est une mesure qui finit abandonnée ou bien pour aller de l'avant avec la vente de passeports. Oui, Rajesh Bhagwan, fidèle à son habitude, il ciblait conseiller au bureau du Premier ministre. Et il a envie de connaître ça conseiller là, le qui mène board, le combien board de siéger, qui s'amène board là et qui mène allowance de gagner. Et puis bien sûr, pour faire le calcul, pour connaître pour moi, combien casse de gagner comme revenu. La question de Johanna Béranger est très importante. D'ailleurs, moi, je soulève ça la dernière fois. Vous connaissez quand il y a le National Communications Committee pendant le COVID-19. Tous les jours, le docteur Zubair Jumaï vient à la télévision pour donner le nombre de cas, update de la situation. À aucun moment, et je trouve ça bien sérieux, je trouve ça aberrant, qui l'ONC est aussi important que COVID-19. Tout le monde angoissé, tracassé, bien connu comme Kaina, donc en plein confinement. Pénal langue des signes. Donc, il est très important, bon, bien sûr, Johanna Béranger, pour cause de bulletin d'information, mais plus important encore, c'est sa conférence de presse du National Communication Committee, pas la langue des signes.
En France, par exemple, c'était une fête.
Oui, et je trouve ça un gros manquement, et j'espère qu'au niveau du gouvernement, au niveau de la MBC, je prends une mesure corrective. Et puis, bien sûr, il y a une question du député travailliste Eshan Juman, la commission d'enquête sur la vente de Britam Kenya, donc une filiale de l'ex-BAI. Il y a envie qu'on ait code commission d'enquête finalisée. Et il y a une commission d'enquête qui peut siéger, Priscilla, avant les élections générales de novembre 2019. N'est plus tant non. Donc, 8 mois, 9 mois après, on a la commission Britam, on a la commission Lo Amina Garif Hakim. Donc, n'est plus tant non, il y a une commission d'enquête là. Et tout ça, pour bien payer ça là, avec l'argent des contribuables. Un bien payé, deuxième bien connaît la vérité, et troisième bien prend action contre un coupable. Donc, on ne peut pas comprendre qu'il n'a réussi à une commission d'enquête là. C'est vrai, pendant 3 mois, il y a le confinement, mais ça fait que quelques temps maintenant, depuis qu'il finit lève le lockdown, mais pas tant non, il y a une commission d'enquête là.
En tout cas, nous poursuivre la PNQ dans quelques petites minutes. Donc, nous rappelle que la PNQ du leader de l'opposition ce matin a axé leur procédure d'urgence pour l'achat d'équipements médicaux et de médicaments pendant le confinement. Arvind Boulel qui questionne Premier ministre Pravin Jugnauth. Il a envie donc connaître comment l'exercice de ce genre-là fin faire. L'implication High Level Committee, le COVID-19 qui est présidé par Premier ministre lui-même. Et si au nom de la transparence, Premier ministre pour initier une enquête lors ministère et organisation qui impliquée. Alors, nous rappelle aussi donc aujourd'hui suite et fin de débat le finance bill ce mardi. Donc on a aussi débat la motion de blâme du leader de l'opposition Arvind Boulel contre le speaker Surojde Fokir pour continuer. À noter aussi que le Real Estate Agent Authority Bill et le Supplementary Appropriation Bill de 2018-2019 qui pour en première lecture, Nawaz.
Oui, et puis, les dommages qui s'amènent une question là, un petit peu au bas, donc forcément pas pour gagner le temps pour que le Premier ministre réponde à une bonne question. Il dit, bon, nous rappelle une bonne question là, nous, auditeurs et internautes qui peuvent suivre l'émission. Et là, une question de Patrice Armance du PMSD. Il a envie qu'on ait une disposition, puis prend quand pour réouvrir une frontière et qui peut prendre comme disposition pour éviter une deuxième vague de la COVID-19. Et une question de Kushal Lobin du PMSD toujours. Alors, Priscilla, ça, c'est une fait à l'actualité. Il y a une raid qui s'est fait à Sainte-Croix le 30 juin 2020. Et là, Kushal Lobin peut dire que possiblement tout ça lié à un trafic humain, c'est-à-dire qu'il peut faire une jeune femme depuis Madagascar, ville Maurice, pour être exploitée sexuellement. Et il y a un réseau qui peut opérer dans nos pays. Et donc, il y a une descente qui se fait le 30 juin. Il y a envie de connaître si tout ça est connecté Mais malheureusement, moi, je crois que le Premier ministre n'est pas capable de répondre à ça parce que c'est une question là un petit peu au bas en notre prioritaire. Il y a aussi une question de Patrick Assiavaden, l'activité du National Security Service, NSS. Ça, c'est une question qui paraît intéressante, mais encore une fois, pas pour gagner le temps pour répondre, Priscilla.
Alors voilà, c'est fait, c'est parti. Nous allons tout de suite en direction de l'Assemblée nationale pour la séance de PNQ d'abord.
Announcements none. Papers have been laid. Questions?
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, before I put the question, I consider it improper that you should be in the chair. Debates will resume soon on the motion of no confidence. It is unbecoming of you, and I consider it that you are not fit under the circumstances to chair the proceedings of today's class.
Carry on with the question, Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I have given private notice to question the Honourable Prime Minister, Minister of Defence, Home Affairs, and External Communication, Minister for Rodrigue, Outer Island and Territorial Integrity, whether, in regard to the emergency procurement of drugs and medical equipment during lockdown period, he will state the total number of such exercises carried out, indicating A, the involvement of the high-level committee on COVID-19 chaired by his good self therein, if any, and B, whether, for the sake of transparency, he proposes to initiate an inquiry in the ministries and organizations involved therein and in relation thereto.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to thank the Honourable Leader of the Opposition for giving me the opportunity, through this private notice question, to set the record straight on many issues pertaining to COVID-19, which have been unnecessarily blown out of proportion by certain honourable members of the opposition and in the media. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a responsible government, it was our duty to ensure that measures were in place to face the unprecedented challenge of an invisible enemy that has turned the world topsy-turvy and put a halt to our normal way of life. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me remind the House that the World Health Organization declared the outbreak of a public health emergency of international concern, that is COVID-19, on 30th January 2020. Subsequently, on 11th March 2020, the COVID-19 outbreak was declared a pandemic. An assessment by the WHO of the risks for Mauritius was that for a population of 1.265 million inhabitants, the risk of exposure was 0.461, with mild infections of 87,424, slightly over 1,000 with severe infection, and over 22,000 hospital admissions and 837 deaths. In the face of such a projected, unprecedented, and alarming situation, we could not remain inactive, but we had to be expediently proactive. A high-level committee on COVID-19 was set up under my chair on 31st of January 2020 to take stock of the projected situation and chalk out the way forward. Mr. Speaker, sir, a first in-depth assessment of the situation that was prevailing across the world was made, and it was observed that panic buying of essential medicines and equipment was the order of the day. At the same time, the Ministry of Health and Wellness carried out an assessment of the existing stock of medicines, equipment, and resources available both in the public and private sectors, and our immediate and future requirements. In view of the extreme urgency to procure our needs, we had no alternative than to have recourse to emergency procurement as provided for under Section 21 of the Public Procurement Act and further borne out by Directive 44 from the Procurement Policy Office. The objective of the emergency procurement process, as pertinently stipulated by the PPO directive, was to, I quote, safeguard life, quality of life, or environment, unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a matter of very deep regret that despite all efforts by our medical team, we could not save the lives of 10 of our fellow citizens. But today, we have been able to steer away from the grim predictions of WHO, and what was happening worldwide had instilled fear and apprehension in the mind of the whole Mauritian population. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the light of the requirement worked out by the Ministry of Health and Wellness to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, it was clear that the ministry, being already stretched to the maximum in terms of resources, would need assistance from other ministries and departments. There was a need to act promptly and effectively, as the world demand was far greater than the supply of medicines and equipment. Thus, major manufacturers and suppliers from different countries were not able to satisfy the high demand. Small island states like Mauritius were particularly vulnerable in that situation of panic buying and tarmac buying. From 23rd March 2020 to 30th of April 2020, the State Trading Corporation carried out 18 procurement exercises by way of emergency procurement under Section 21 of the Public Procurement Act and Directive 44 of the Procurement Policy Office, from 6 bidders for a total value of 1,040,519,412 rupees using STC's own funds. The Ministry of Commerce and Consumer Protection, on its part, carried out 4 emergency procurement for the Ministry of Health and Wellness for a total amount of 95,341,250 rupees, with funds made available by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. With regard to the Ministry of Health and Wellness, it undertook 66 emergency procurement exercises, as from 23rd of March 2020 as follows: 8 emergency procurement exercises for pharmaceutical products, 51 emergency procurement exercises for protective equipment, 7 emergency procurement exercises for laboratory reagents and products. The technical bids received from the suppliers were examined by a technical committee and contracts were awarded. I am informed that some of the items have been delivered, whereas others are yet to be delivered. Mr. Speaker, sir, in regard to part A of the question, the high-level committee on COVID-19 was set up to very closely monitor our preparedness for and response to the pandemic and take strategic decisions to ensure that appropriate and timely action was being taken to procure medical supplies and equipment to contain the spread of the diseases in our territory. Mr. Speaker, sir, to remind the House, it was under the stewardship of the high-level COVID committee that many bold and decisive measures were taken, including timely implementation of quarantine measures and the designation of new quarantine facilities. In fact, with the arrival of more passengers, mainly Mauritians, coming back to the country, 20 hotels were turned into quarantine centers in collaboration with the Ministry of Tourism and ARIM. Posting of medical and non-medical staff from the Ministry of Health and Wellness to all quarantine centers, extension of the total ban on travelers to enter the territory of Mauritius, suspension of all flights to Rodrigues so as to keep the island free from COVID-19. Preventive measures were also taken to protect the island of Agaliga. Making of the prevention and mitigation of infectious disease coronavirus regulations 2020 to deal specifically with the COVID-19 pandemic. Concurrent closing of all trading premises as an additional measure to prevent the spread of the virus. Maintaining strict control and monitoring at port level, including systematic checks for all cruise ship passengers entering the Mauritian territory, while applying entry restrictions that were ongoing for various countries and parts of the world. Ensuring urgent procurement and medical supplies, protective equipment such as ventilators, test kits, swabs, PCR reagents, amongst others. In fact, we arranged for Air Mauritius to airlift more than 340 tons of such medical supplies and materials, mainly from China. Ensuring procurement of additional drugs and protective equipment such as surgical and N95 masks, personal protective equipment, goggles, gloves, and other essential requirements. Carrying out contact tracing in the community following detection of COVID-19 cases. Targeted screening campaign for COVID-19 using rapid antigen tests. Creation of a hotline 8924 for all matters related to COVID-19 and health issues. Undertaking massive education and sensitization campaign in the media on preventive and hygiene measures, including the creation of a dedicated web page and mobile app. Putting into place a home visit system for urgent cases necessitating medical intervention. Putting into place a triage system in all regional hospitals in order to direct patients with COVID-19.
I've asked a specific question, and the questions are there to be replied to. If the Honourable Minister wants to make a statement, there is statement time, and he can do so, but not to waste the time of the House with replies which are not relevant to the question.
I'm not wasting the time of the House, I'm replying to your question.
Carry on.
Yes. Putting into place, let me repeat again, putting into place a home visit system for urgent cases necessitating medical intervention. Putting into place a triage system in all regional hospitals in order to direct patients with COVID-19-like symptoms to flu fever clinics, thus limiting contact with other patients. Distribution of basic food items to shelters, homes, charitable institutions, and to families who are on the social register of Mauritius. Introduction of COVID-19 wage support scheme to provide financial support to employees becoming technically unemployed on a temporary basis. Setting up of the COVID-19 Solidarity Fund to finance projects and programs
Give
related
a ruling
to
on the point which I've
COVID-19
raised.
and to provide financial
Prime Minister to
support to persons and organizations affected by COVID-19. Arrangements for carers looking after elderly and persons with disabilities, for them also to be provided with amenities including food items and medicines, and payment of basic pensions at place of residence. Mr. Speaker, sir, as regards Part B of the question, I do not propose to initiate any inquiry in ministries and organizations involved in the procurement exercise. I wish to reiterate that the emergency procurement of medical supplies has been done in accordance with Section 21 of the Public Procurement Act and Directive 44 of the Policy Procurement Office. It is now in the public domain that the Independent Commission Against Corruption has initiated an inquiry into the issue of procurement of medicines and equipment during the COVID-19 period. Given that ICAC is presently investigating into the matter, and by virtue of Section 81(3) of the Prevention of Corruption Act, no further information can be disclosed on this matter. Mr. Speaker, sir, our timely actions and decisions saved lives and shielded our country from the chaotic situation that was predicted by the World Health Organization. We succeeded as a nation because we rose up to the challenge through bold and effective political leadership, inventiveness, remarkable discipline, resilience, and national solidarity. We delivered against all odds, and despite a despicable campaign of misinformation and disinformation, led and fueled by some people in the opposition and the media. That is what the majority of the people retains. Our fellow citizens know that this government suppressed the transmission of COVID-19 and saved them from disaster on the health front. Today, Mauritius is COVID safe, and that is what matters most. It is an achievement that is acknowledged and acclaimed internationally. It is unfortunate that the opposition continues to play cheap politics on a matter of national urgency. I leave them to their unpatriotic behavior. As Prime Minister, I have been on the forefront on a Venkat set basis to do whatever is possible within our means to protect our fellow citizens, reduce their hardship and save lives. For me, that is sacred, and it goes in line with my political commitment to dedicate myself to the service of the nation. Thank you.
Speaker, yes, Prime Minister will go down in history as the best Prime Minister with the best cover-up. That's what he is. That's what it's all about. Cover-up. And you're trying, this is conspiracy to defraud. That's what it's all about. And if Prime Minister is willing to answer questions, I hope he will answer those questions.
Leader of the Opposition, decorum
Yes.
and supplementary question.
And I will refer to the Procurement Policy Office in respect of proceedings relating to the emergency procurement that has to be recorded. Can I ask Prime Minister if he has nothing to hide, to table all the proceedings recorded in relation to these emergency procurement exercises?
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is the leader of the opposition is talking about cover-up. I have nothing to cover up. But we can see the cover-up in the opposition itself. Huh? The time will come when we will see. The time will come when we will see what kind of cover-up is happening in the opposition.
No conversation, leader of the opposition, decorum. You call questions. No conversation.
But, Mr. Speaker, sir, as there have been numerous PNQs, PQs, whereby Minister of Health have already answered, have given details. There have been numerous press conferences where all information has been given to the public. And now that ICAC is investigating, all the information is already available in the public domain and is available at ICAC. So let ICAC do its inquiry.
Speaker, the nation will take note that the Prime Minister has refused to table all the proceedings recorded in relation to those emergency procurement exercise. Can I ask him, under the same directive issued by a prosecution policy office, in respect of 4, where accounting officers shall keep proper records with respect to the decision to resort to emergency procurement. Can I ask him if he has nothing to be afraid of? Can I ask him to table the decision to resort to emergency procurement? This is very important. If you want information in the name of transparency and accountability, can Prime Minister table this information?
I am not afraid of anything, Mr. Speaker, sir, and least of this kind of opposition. But the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is asking for minutes and for decisions which have been taken. Well, ICAC has already seized documents and they are inquiring into the matter. So I don't think there's any necessity for tabling anything else.
I will ask you again, is there a protocol for the procurement of drugs and medical equipment in times of disaster and emergency? And if so, will he table a copy of the protocol?
Mr. Speaker, sir, to my information, everything has been done according to law.
So if everything has been done according to law, why are you afraid to table those relevant documents on the table?
You don't have any right to shout there. Continue, Leader of the Opposition.
Yes. Now, can I ask Prime Minister whether the Spanish company, Pact and Blister, came to know about our emergency procurement and win orders giving rise to permits in excess of 500 million rupees? How did they come to know of our of our emergency procurement? And how is it that they won payments in excess of 500 million rupees? Was it manna that fall from heaven, or that information was related to them? And so I'd like to hear that from Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in fact, we have to thank this company because at the time when yes, we have to thank the company for having responded and supplied us with
Order, please.
with equipment.
Order.
At that time, Mr. Speaker, sir, there was a situation where you could place an order and the manufacturers, different companies, suppliers were not able to supply. In fact, the opposition themselves at that time, they were saying, "Oh, you prepared?" They put questions in this very house, PNQs, PQs, that this government, I think it's good that I quote what they were saying at that time. Just to remind them, because they forget what they say.
Order.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition said, well...
Order.
He said, can I come now to the Honourable Minister of Health? When a patient is admitted, do we have reagent to check the virus? Yet! No reagent is available. Yet! At that time, can he see to it that they have N95 protective mask, that they have protective dress and wear, even dress, Mr. Speaker, sir, and that the reagent is available.
Honourable members.
And he said himself, the reagent is not available. The government is putting at risk the health status of the people of the Republic of Mauritius. And I will say it again, government has failed to live up to the expectation of the nation. He continued again later on. He asked Minister of Health, can I ask him, and I hope that he understands the gravity of the situation. Can I impress upon the Prime Minister? He was impressing on the Prime Minister that under the circumstances, we have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I would like to know whether in the action plan, all considerations are taken on board, first of all, in respect of stockpiling medicines and relevant equipment. He has forgotten. Let me remind him again. Can I ask him whether government has taken on board the worst case scenario, where there is the risk that there is a worst case scenario? As I say, we have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Where 80%, listen to that, Mr. Speaker, sir, where 80% of the population can be affected with a mortality rate of 2%. Can I ask the Honourable Prime Minister whether adequate resources have been disbursed to ensure that our regional hospitals or general hospitals are equipped to deal with the problem? This is what they were saying at that time. Now, can you imagine? Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, sir? Can you imagine, Mr. Speaker, sir, if we were in a situation where we were not able to procure for medication and equipment and all the supplies that was required in this country to face with the COVID-19? You know what the opposition would have said today? Then they would have said, why didn't you buy emergency procurement? Why didn't you stockpile medication? This is what they would have said. This is what I call cheap politics. And it's a shame. It's a shame on this opposition.
Order! Order, please! Order on both
Mr.
sides
Speaker,
of the House. Order both sides
the
of the
Prime
House.
Minister, can I inform all of them sitting on the government bench? What Prime Minister has done, he has given a license in relation to conspiracy to defraud. That's what he has done.
Oh, this is
and he's guilty of
Honourable
it.
Leader of the
That's what he
Opposition.
has done.
If you have,
That's what he has done.
if you have the courage,
Conspiracy to
Speaker, sir.
defraud.
Order, please! Order! Order both sides of the House here. This is imputing motives. Reframe your question and carry on.
Say it again. It's conspiracy to defraud. That's what it's all about.
I say this is imputing motives. This is the second warning. Either you withdraw it, withdraw this.
Mr. Speaker, can I ask the Prime Minister if there is honesty of purpose?
I asked you to withdraw because you said you repeat it.
I will say it again. There's conspiracy to defraud.
Order
That's
both
what
sides
it's all
of the
about.
House. Order! Order here.
Yeah. Mr.
Order!
Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, I warn you. and
Mr.
you say
Speaker.
you repeat. Show decorum. Show parliamentary democracy. Show
Mr.
decorum.
Speaker, I have a
Withdraw
right.
it.
I have a right to say that this
Withdraw.
amount
How
withdraw.
about you should be said? You have to
withdraw.
withdraw it.
I withdraw the protest because I've
Thank
said
you
the
very
truth.
much.
Because I've said
Carry
the
on.
truth. The truth hurts. Mr. Speaker, sir, with respect to purchase from Pack and Blister, can we have exchange of correspondence? In the spirit of transparency and accountability, can he table this document? And can I ask him whether Pack and Blister, is it on the database list of Ministry of Health in relation to reliable suppliers? Is he on that list?
Mr. Speaker, sir, let me say again that at that time, when we look at what was happening around in the world, there were companies and there were major countries. It's good that we situate the context. In France, for example, they have ordered masks, a plane load of Chinese masks, destined for France.
Honourable
You know
Leader of
what?
the Opposition, you don't have the right to do that. Show decorum to the House. Let the Honourable Prime Minister reply to your question.
The-
Show decorum.
So I'm saying a plane load of Chinese made masks destined for France were bought up right on the tarmac. The Prime Minister Trudeau stated, "We need to make sure that equipment that is destined for Canada gets to and stays in Canada." Health Minister of Brazil said attempts by Brasilia to purchase protection gear, such as gloves and masks from China, had fallen through. Turkey had banned exports of protecting gears. Their stock destined to Italian and Belgian market never arrived. And shipment up to 6 million masks bound for Germany mysteriously disappeared while passing through the East African country. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, in that context, at that time, there was what we call panic buying around the world. And therefore, it was of utmost importance that we see to it that we have adequate supplies of medication and equipment to face and to cope with this COVID-19. And I can say from the information that we gathered, there were a number of companies that were not able to supply to us. And therefore, that is why, in such cases, the law provides also for emergency procurement. And finally, let me say one thing. Si le leader de l'opposition n'est pas un poltron, qu'il répète à l'extérieur de cette chambre ce qu'il vient de retirer ici, s'il répète à l'extérieur de la chambre. Si vous n'êtes pas un poltron.
Of course there has been. Shut your mouth. I can see blisters cropping on the face of the Prime Minister by telling nothing. What he's saying is not true at all. Let me ask the Prime Minister, is this the reason why those reliable suppliers were sidelined to give opportunities to rogue traders who didn't even have a license to import? Are these reliable importers? Can he answer to those questions? Giving contract to a company which doesn't have an after-sales service in this country?
You already made your point.
Well, we will see.
Listen, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, whenever I put order in the House, you can't repeat things after my speech. You are the one who said we have to have decorum. It starts with you. Lead by example. Continue, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sir, is talking about rogue companies. We'll see what will happen in the future about disqualification of rogue companies. But anyway, he doesn't speak about Biocom Limited, a company whose chairman is Mr. Said Hossain. The directors are all Said Hossain and have supplied the Ministry of Health and has been paid millions of rupees. This he doesn't say. He doesn't talk about. He doesn't talk about Kamal Trading Company Limited. I don't want to say.
Order, please.
I don't want to mention the name of the directors. I don't want to mention the name of the directors because they are so well acquainted to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. So why I mention these two cases? I have nothing against those two companies, no against any one of the directors. What I'm saying is, at that time, there has been no copinage, there has been no triage. We have bought equipment with those companies and those suppliers who were able to supply and who had, in fact, given us the guarantee that they would deliver. This is what we did, Mr. Speaker.
Last supplementary question.
Mr. Speaker, we know that money has been disbursed upfront without commissioning of equipment. And I would like to know why that money was disbursed by STC. I would like the Prime Minister to say whether there was a letter or a fax given by Dr. Jumai to the senior chief executive of the Minister of Health, Mr. Bagan, who submitted that request to Mr. Ragen. And then he impressed upon STC to make the disbursement, knowing that there was no equipment available, despite commissioning of equipment, but money was effected. So I would like the Prime Minister to say so. And if he's keen, in the name of transparency and accountability, I'll invite him to set up this commission of inquiry with wide term of reference. If he's keen to ensure that there's no copinage, that there's no conflict of interest, that there's no conspiracy to defraud, I invite him, if he has the courage, if he's a man of principle, to set up this commission of inquiry, and I dare him to do so.
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, what is it that the Leader of the Opposition now wants? In his PNQ, he said, initiate an inquiry in the ministries and organizations.
Please, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, control yourself.
So he said, the question says, initiate an inquiry in the ministries and organizations. Now he's talking about a commission of inquiry. And on top of that, members of his party has already gone to ICAC to make a declaration. And supposedly they have already communicated proof. So we'll see. But Mr. Speaker, sir, what I can say is, so far, I can speak for up to today, so far, all the orders that were placed with different companies and all the supplies that came to Mauritius, we have a technical committee, we have technical people who have inspected those orders to see to it that they conform with the specifications and with standards, acceptable standards. And so far, we haven't had any problem. As I said in my reply, there are other equipments that are still being awaited. Of course, we are looking to make sure that those equipment conform to the required specifications and that we don't end up in a situation where what happened in, for example, in the UK, where they had ordered ventilators, and when the ventilators came, they were defective. So this, of course, we have to see to it that doesn't happen to Mauritius, and we have taken all necessary precautions to see to it that we get good equipment.
Time over by 5 minutes. Honourable members, the table have been advised that PQB 300 will be replied by Honourable Minister of Gender and Family Welfare. PQB 302 has been withdrawn. Honourable Nagalingam.
B285, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the regions of Trèfle and Plaisance are located in the outskirts of the town of Rosil and comprise mainly residential areas with a population of around 9,000 and 7,500 respectively. The regions fall within the policing jurisdiction of Stanley Police. For the past decades, cannabis, heroin, Subutex, and psychotropic substances have been the 4 most abused drugs in the country. However, over the past years, there has been an emergence of synthetic drugs, particularly synthetic cannabinoids, among drug users. This situation also prevails in the region of Trèfle and Plaisance. I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that since January 2015 up to 16th of July 2020, 232 cases of drugs have been detected in the regions of Trèfle and Plaisance, leading to the arrest of 236 persons, compared to 317 cases from 2009 to 2014. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a result of the intensified actions by the police in the fight against drugs, a decrease of about 27% has been observed in drug cases detected in the regions concerned. The measures taken by the police are as follows. ADSU and other units of the force have intensified their operations in the relentless fight against the proliferation of drugs by conducting targeted intelligence-led crackdown operations. Sensitization campaigns are being carried out jointly by ADSU Education Cell, Crime Prevention Unit, and local police on the ill effects of drugs and its legal implications. Constant interactions with members of the socio-cultural groups have raised awareness, particularly amongst youngsters, and on the repercussion of drugs. The recent record drug seizures has considerably influenced the supply and availability of drugs on the local market. Safe City project has been introduced and is contributing in a marked manner in the prevention and detection of crimes and illicit activities, including drugs. 11 intelligence video surveillance cameras have been installed at different sites in these regions. Roadblocks and vehicle checkpoints are being carried out daily at odd hours by SMF, SSU, and ERS personnel in the regions of Trèfle and Plaisance, whereby suspicious persons and drivers of vehicles are being questioned and systematically checked, and additional resources in terms of vehicles and manpower have been provided to ADSU to increase their operational effectiveness. ADSU personnel have also been provided with tailor-made training and sophisticated equipment to enhance their operational capabilities. The fight against drug abuse and illicit trafficking remains one of this government's priorities in its endeavor to promote a safer and healthier society. To this end, the police are being provided with additional resources and support with a view to combating the drug scourge. Mr. Speaker, sir, over and above the measures taken by the police, the collaboration of all other stakeholders is imperative to make Mauritius a drug-free island. In this regard, the Harm Reduction Unit of the Ministry of Health and Wellness carries out drug prevention program, needle exchange program, methadone substitution therapy, and runs addiction units in the 5 regional hospitals. Concerning the region of Rosil, as at June 2020, there were 463 beneficiaries for MST, that is, an increase of around 10% since end of 2018, that is 417 beneficiaries. This is a significant harm reduction measure in order to curb dependence on opiates like heroin. Similarly, the Ministry of Education, Tertiary Education, Science and Technology has put in place several preventive measures in schools, which include the following: setting up of a Health and Wellness Directorate to look into the drug use prevention in schools, among other roles and responsibilities, revisiting the school health clubs to better address health issues, anti-drug education in curriculum, a structured, extensive prevention program at the level of educational institutions conducted with the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the assistance of ADSU, the Brigade pour la Protection des Mineurs, and NGOs to address the drug problem as well as share information. Protocol on substance abuse in schools and drug use prevention program Get Connected in secondary schools. In addition to these measures, a number of programs are run by the Ministry of Youth Empowerment, Sports and Recreation to empower youth and equip them with skills and attitudes to face current life challenges, one of which is resisting peer pressure to indulge in substance abuse. A number of activities have been organized in 2019 in the Trèfle and Rosil regions through the Trèfle Youth Center, which comprise, amongst others, activities focusing on drug abuse and related issues, including talks on drug prevention for around 75 young people in March by the ADSU, and workshops on prevention of addictive behavior among youth in September, and a number of community-oriented programs to promote the social connectedness of young people, which is recognized as a protective factor against drug prevention and other social evils, such as community-based programs, family seminars, and jeux interquartiers. Furthermore, since end of June 2020, the National Drug Secretariat has, in collaboration with the MBC, launched a national media campaign against drug abuse. The campaign comprises a series of short video clips, dedicated thematic programs, dossiers, live and interactive radio talks on the services provided by the different stakeholders, as well as measures taken to combat the drug scourge.
Yes, I've listened carefully to the Honorable Prime Minister, but we have witnessed during the last few months, especially during the lockdown period, the way the drug traffickers have changed the incoming of synthetic drugs, which is easily made by people who have a basic knowledge of chemistry, which is cheap and delivered on a door-to-door basis. Can I ask the Honorable Prime Minister what is being done in the light of these new developments in this sector?
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have replied extensively. There are operations that are being done by ADSU, based, of course, on, first of all, intelligence gathering, and in terms of, seeing how the movements of some people who are suspected to be involved in the drug trafficking business. And then the other, institutions, ministries concerned, and I don't want to repeat again, because there are lots of measures that have been applied by Ministry of Education, Ministry of Sports, Ministry of Health as well.
Mr. Speaker, we have also seen that many police raids fail because the drug traffickers seem to have information on the timing of the raid. Can I ask the Honourable Prime Minister whether he will see with the Commissioner of Police to do a sort of reshuffling in the ADSU team?
Well, what the Honourable Member is saying, I have also heard it from different quarters, and I have had, in fact, letters from some inhabitants also making the same complaint, that they have been giving information to police and there has been either no action or that there are some people who are accomplices with those traffickers. Mr. Speaker, sir, what I do is whenever I have information, whenever there are people who write to me, I take it seriously because, as I say, it is one of the priorities of government to carry on with the fight against drug trafficking. And I have always conveyed to both the Commissioner of Police and to the head of ADSU those information. And I can say, and I can appeal to members and to the public also, that if there are any information, credible of course, which they will wish to convey to me, they can always address any communication to me, and I will ensure at least that these are taken seriously. And I must say also that in the past there have been operations that have been conducted by ADSU. Unfortunately, for some reason or another, it seems that some people are already aware that ADSU officers would be coming to their place and to the region. And unfortunately, in some, I'm not talking about with Trèfle and Plaisance, I'm talking about in some cases, there have been even complicity of people in the neighborhood to prevent also officers, ADSU officers, from doing their job. So, yes, we need to join hands, and I am open if any reliable, credible information is conveyed to me. I can undertake that I will do the needful.
Honorable Dano. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I would like to know from the Honorable Prime Minister, with the emergence of synthetic drugs, has there been any amendment that has been made to the Dangerous Drugs Act to include those substances?
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, there have been, in fact, this is one very serious problem with regard to synthetic drugs, because we know that they are, there are different chemicals that they put together in order to develop new types of drugs. Now, on the 8th of October 2013, we had passed regulations under Section 62B of the Dangerous Drugs Act, whereby synthetic cannabinoids and their derivatives have been included in Part 2 of the first schedule of the Act. Now, the laws have been further amended again on the 11th of September 2015 to include, amongst other drugs, synthetic catenones, their chemical diversities and derivatives in Part 2 of the first schedule of the Dangerous Drugs Act. And the Dangerous Drugs Act also have been further amended on the 1st of June 2019 to include other types of synthetic cannabinoid, synthetic catenones, and synthetic opioids, amongst others. Now, the synthetic cannabinoids are often laced, this is what I'm informed, into herbal products and sold under different appellations. But of course, under the law, we don't put the name or the appellations. We have to put the chemicals that are forbidden and that falls under the Dangerous Drugs Act.
Last supplementary, Honorable Duval.
So I'd like to ask the Honorable Prime Minister whether he is aware that there are now more police officers attached to the VIPSU than attached to the ADSU, and whether he doesn't think that is a wrong allocation of human resources and the wrong priorities for the country.
Well, I have to check. I don't think there are more officers attached to VIPSU than ADSU. But anyway, we should realize also that VIPSU, there is a purpose for having VIPSU officers also. This has not existed as from now. It has been a unit that has catered for for their different objectives since so many years. So, but let me inform the honourable member also that we have increased the personnel throughout the years. Over time, we have provided with more officers to both ADSU and to the police. We have also increased the resources available in terms of vehicles, in terms of equipment. So this has been done, as we can always compare. I don't want to go into the details. I have a whole, in fact, I did ask also, but I don't want to compare from what was obtained in the previous government and what we are doing now. But I do realize that it is a very serious problem, and I can say that this government is determined to fight the drug traffickers, and we have given results, but we need to go on further with our battle against drug traffickers.
Mr. Speaker, I've raised my point of order.
Yes, what is your point of order?
We have nearly taken the Prime Minister, although this is a serious question, 16 minutes.
No,
But
this
we
is
are-
not a point of order.
Ah,
Next question.
according to you, it's a point.
Honorable Osman Mohamed. Next question.
Yes, B286.
But you ask questions, you don't want me to reply? Yeah, I have to reply.
Order, please. No point to be made. Next question.
Yeah.
Reply, please.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, sir. In the wake of the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, COVID-19, by virtue of the relevant regulations, members of the public were called upon to observe sanitary measures, including the wearing of protective masks for the purpose of preventing the spread of the disease and the resurgence of the pandemic, namely, A, wearing of protective masks whilst being at any bus stop, bus shelter, bus station or taxi stand and in bus. Regulation 4 of the Road Traffic COVID-19 Sanitary Measures, Regulations of 2020, dated 16th of May 2020, refers to wearing of protective masks while being on light rail premises or light rail commuter facility and on board light rail vehicle. Regulation 4 of the Light Rail COVID-19 Sanitary Measures, Regulations of 2020, dated 16th of May 2020 refers. And 3, wearing of protective mask over nose and mouth in any place other than ordinary place of residence. Regulation 4 of the Prevention of Resurgence and Further Spread of Epidemic Disease COVID-19, Regulations of 2020, dated 17th of May 2020 refers. I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that the wearing of face masks has not per se impacted on the effectiveness of policing operations, as the safe city cameras are being used for the prevention and detection of crimes based on live information on the ground, management of traffic, and prompt response to public requests and emergencies. However, it may partially impact on the identification of suspects regarding facial recognition. Nevertheless, the footages are still useful during police investigation, as besides facial identification, there are other features and details which can be retrieved that can assist the police in identifying the suspects, though they are wearing protective face masks. Mr. Speaker, sir, identification evidence is not obtained exclusively by facial recognition. If such evidence is of poor quality, the police has recourse to other modes of identification through victims and witnesses, samples that are taken to be analyzed, fingerprints and footprints identification, the use of tracker dog, photoelectronically fit, and deoxyribonucleic acid. The safe city cameras are equipped with necessary attributes which can provide adequate information for the identification of suspects, even if they are wearing protective masks. These attributes include the high-definition footages, infrared, and pan-tilt zoom cameras. With the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, Mauritius, like other countries in the world, is faced with an unprecedented situation, and it was vital and expedient to take appropriate sanitary measures to protect the population from this invisible enemy. Therefore, wearing a protective mask to protect the population from the disease is vital, while the safe city camera is a must to ensure public safety and security.
Yes, thank you. In his reply, the Honourable Prime Minister has stated that it will partly impact. Now, in reply to my parliamentary question B523 of 2019, the then Minister Mentor had explained that facial recognition, which is an integral part of the Safe City project, is a biometric software application capable of identifying an individual by comparing and analyzing patterns based on his or her facial contours. Now, what will happen if someone commits a crime? He's wearing a mask, he's wearing sunglasses, a hat, and a thick jacket. How will the very purpose of this project be met in that case?
Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I say, we have to be, il faut être, faire face à l'évidence. Si quelqu'un est en train de faire tout pour ne pas être identifié, in terms of camouflage, putting hat, wearing glasses and everything, well, obviously it is going to be very difficult at first sight to be able to identify that person. But that doesn't mean to say that we cannot use, cameras for purposes of identification. This, as I have replied, this will always be helpful for the police because there are other features that they look at. I don't want to give more details about it because obviously it is a matter for police to, during the course of the inquiry that they conduct, to be able to come to suspects. So they are helpful. They will enable police in the course of the inquiry. And I don't know what the honourable member is proposing then. That what do we do? We have to admit there is an issue with regard to identification. But as I said, it is a partial problem, but we can make use of those information in the course of inquiry.
Honourable Lobin. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Has the Prime Minister been communicated with any report or study with regard to the efficiency of the face recognition technology being used in the Safe City project? Because in the UK, for example, when the project was first started, in 98% of cases, as per a report prepared for the Metropolitan Police, they got it wrong with regard to identification. Has there been such a report initiated in Mauritius to see to it that this system is working perfectly well in Mauritius?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I must say that I am not aware of any report. I believe if there was a report, it would have been communicated to me as I'm replying to this question. But I don't want to say that there's no report also. So I need to check from the police if there has been either a report or survey or what has been done in order to assess how effective and how useful those cameras have been with regard to, we are talking of with regard to identification. Yeah.
Honourable Law Supplementary.
Yes, thank you. In reply to PQB 385 of 15 May 2018 of the Honourable Ramadou, who was then opposition MP, the Honourable Minister Mentor had stated roughly over that the project will be implemented on an operating lease basis over a period of 20 years, and the cost implication as per contractual terms are in US dollars 18 million rupees for the first 7 years and 24 million rupees for the next following years, amounting to about 800 million rupees per year. Can I ask the Honourable Prime Minister, being given that the impact there will be on the project, whether discussions could be held with, between the Mauritius Police Force, Mauritius Telecom and Huawei to revisit the project because we are spending so much money and the objective is partly met only at this stage?
Well, first of all, Mr. Speaker, sir, I cannot confirm the figures that have been mentioned by the honourable member because the question is not about the financial aspect of the Safe City project. But anyway, the fact now that with this unprecedented situation that we are living in today, where we have had to pass regulations to make it compulsory for people to wear masks, that cannot be a reason why we need now to revisit the contract, because sometimes there are certain situations that can arise that we of course we do not foresee, or that there are certain situations that even if we can foresee, but cannot be attributed and make it become the responsibility of the contractor. I give this is a personal opinion. Of course, we can always look at it and check, but I don't think that this is one reason why we need now to revisit and the terms and conditions of the contract.
I'm advised that PQB 296 has been withdrawn. Next.
Du député Faradomi sur la mesure budgétaire proposant à ban étranger le passeport mauricien compte une contribution non remboursable d'1 million de dollars au Mauritius Sovereign Fund.
At the very outset, I wish to point out that the honourable member has, in his question, incorrectly quoted the amount of contribution mentioned in the budget speech 2018-2019 regarding the proposed scheme to obtain a Mauritian passport. He has referred the amount to be $1 million instead of $500,000 US. Mr. Speaker, sir, as Minister also responsible for the portfolio of finance, I announced in my budget speech 2018-2019, amongst others, that with a view to further opening up our economy and country to the rest of the world, the Economic Development Board would manage 2 schemes to attract high net worth individuals who satisfy defined criteria and after due diligence, namely, and I quote, the first scheme will offer foreigners the opportunity to obtain Mauritian citizenship, provided they make a non-refundable contribution of $1 million to a Mauritius sovereign fund. For their spouse and dependents, they will have to make an additional contribution of $100,000 per member of family. The second scheme will offer the opportunity to obtain a Mauritian passport, provided they make a contribution of $500,000 to the Mauritius Sovereign Fund. For their spouse and dependents, they will have to make an additional contribution of $50,000 per passport, unquote. Mr. Speaker, sir, the House will recall that in my summing up speech on 25th June 2018, in the context of the 2018-19 budget exercise, I did mention that the schemes will have to be implemented with care, well-thought guidelines, strictly defined eligibility criteria, proper due diligence, whilst also ensuring that the schemes do not undermine the social fabrics of our society. I also stated that the implementation of the said schemes will, in the first instance, require the drafting and enactment of new legislations. Both schemes have so far not been implemented. Mr. Speaker, sir, as the House is aware, in the 2020-2021 budget speech, a new strategy has been announced with a view to opening our economy and country to the world using a 4-pronged approach as follows. To provide more certainty to existing investors and their families who choose to relocate to Mauritius despite the COVID-19 situation and take business risks, to retain successful investors and professionals and encourage them to further invest in the country as well as to boost the economy, to attract new talents and investment to Mauritius, and to encourage non-citizens who have already acquired property in Mauritius to contribute to the economy by exempting them from the requirement to apply for a work permit or an occupation permit to work in Mauritius. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, sir, the following measures, amongst others, will be implemented. The validity period of an occupation permit and residence permit in respect of a retired non-citizen will be increased from 3 years to 10 years. Occupation permits for investors and self-employed and residence permits as retired non-citizens, which are valid as of 1st September 2020 will be extended from 3 years to 10 years. The validity period of a permanent residence permit will be extended from 10 years to 20 years. The minimum investment criteria to be eligible for a permanent residence permit for investors will be reviewed from $500,000 USD to $375,000 USD. And the minimum purchase price for non-citizens to acquire an immovable property under the Integrated Resort Scheme, the Real Estate Scheme, Invest Hotel Scheme, Property Development Scheme, or Smart City Scheme will be reviewed from $500,000 USD to $375,000 USD. Mr. Speaker, sir, the relevant legislations are being reviewed through the Finance Miscellaneous Provisions Bill in order to give effect to the above measures. The Economic Development Board, which will be responsible for the implementation of the measures, would subsequently carry out an assessment of the situation, in the light of which a decision would be taken regarding the two measures announced in the 2018-2019 budget speech.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. I refer to the reply that you made to Honorable Utim in 2019, April, question B225, where exactly you just mentioned that the government was looking at drafting an enactment of the bill of two legislation, Mauritius Sovereign Bill and the Mauritius National Investment Authority Bill. Is that my understanding now that with the new strategy, as in the new bill that is coming forward, 2019-20, regarding the incentives to professionals and investors, that the government proposal to bring such bill is no longer the agenda of the government as it was proposed before, and that the new strategy is superseding the proposal that was presented to us in 2018-19 budget speech.
Well, I have replied, Mr. Speaker, sir, to say that there is going to be an assessment of those measures that now have been announced in the budget speech, and that in the light of that, of course, ongoing works are being carried out by the EDB, but the EDB will surely, as per our instructions, to look at those measures and see and make recommendations. As I say, no final decisions has been taken so far. So a decision will be taken in the light of those information.
I'm over by 5 minutes.
Voilà donc pour cette séance de PMQT et juste avant la PNQ. Alors, Nawaz Nobucks, élément qui nous retenir de sa PNQ là, eh bien, Arvin Boulel, Tipianvi connaît si au nom de la transparence, Premier ministre pour initier une enquête l'Oban ministre, c'est une organisation qui est impliquée dans la procédure pour l'achat d'équipements et médicaments pendant le confinement. Alors, Premier ministre fin rappelle, fin dire qu'en fait, l'ICAC peut enquêter et les fin revine justement l'eau emergency procurement, les fin dire qui fin pas fin l'autre alternative qui n'a recours à emergency procurement pour l'achat d'équipements raison Covid-19. Les objectif c'est pour sauve la vie bandimoun, les dire qui tibizin agir promptement, les fin rappel entre autres détails concernant emergency procurement, donc STC entre autres qui fin fait 18 emergency exercise et aussi les fin dire qu'il y a un produit qui fin délivré et d'autres non. Et les fin revine, donc les fin énumèrent une disposition qui fin prend pour assurer la sécurité sanitaire. Donc il y a 300 tonnes d'équipements qui fin venir depuis la Chine. Et les fin dire aussi, Pravin Jagnet fin dire à Nawaz Nobucks qui l'ICAC peut enquêter et qui pas pour capable de ne plus détails. Il dit que Maurice c'est Covid safe, c'est ça le plus important et qui l'opposition peut faire cheap politics. Arvin Boulel fin dire qui est un cover-up et il fin demande Premier ministre pour table ban document law procurement exercise. Premier Jagnat donc fin rappel qui l'ICA peut enquêter. Orvin Boulel fin envie connaît qui ban protocole pour emergency procurement. Premier ministre fin dire qui tout fin faire selon la loi. Et la question donc Nawaz Nombox concernant pack and blister. Orvin Boulel fin envie connaît comment pack and blister est au courant de nos emergency procurement.
Oui, Priscilla Sadien, fait important à souligner en début de séance, avant qu'il y pose au PNQ, Orvin Boulel, leader d'opposition, invite le speaker à se retirer parce qu'il y a une motion de blâme qui fin déposée contre lui, et sa motion de blâme-là, pour continuer à être débattue ce soir, il invite Sourjide Foki à se retirer, mais le speaker, donc, pas fin bronché. Alors, pour vin sa PNQ là, Priscilla Sadien, Orvin Boulel, catégorique, lui dire que c'est the best cover-up et lui dire sous immunité parlementaire et un complot pour commettre fraude. Premier ministre Diali, si tu pas un poltron, répète ça en déo l'hémicycle, c'est qui te ne fait que dire. C'est quand même une déclaration bien fausse de Orvin Boulel. Conspiracy to defraud, c'est une allégation bien sérieuse. Et au fin de Priscilla Sadien, Premier ministre dit qu'il part pour une commission d'enquête parce qu'il dit que PDSA peut enquêter et il dit qu'il veut respecter la loi, c'est-à-dire le Public Procurement Act qui prévoit Emergency Procurement. Il dit qu'il veut agir d'après la loi. Orvin Boulel insister la transparence. Il dit Premier ministre rend public table to ban proceedings durant l'exercice procurement. Tout ben minutes de ben réunion qu'il fait, ben protocole établi, Orvin Boulel dit Premier ministre s'il est non pour cacher, s'il respecte la loi, eh bien table tout ben document. Premier ministre dit qu'il l'ICA qu'il finit saisi documents et l'ICA peut enquêter. Le pack and blister au fin de Priscilla, leader de l'opposition pose la question mais qui manière sa compagnie qui est basée en Espagne connaît qu'ici à Maurice pour lance emergency procurement. Le Premier ministre pas vraiment répondre à la question. Qui dit nous besoin remercier sa compagnie là, les finit de nous à un moment que tiena panic buying et tarmac buying. Donc c'est vrai hein, donc pendant le lockdown, il y a beaucoup de problèmes, tout ben pays, ben grand pays, tu peux acheter à droite, à gauche, tu as tarmac buying, et le Premier ministre finit dire qu'il y a une cargaison qui est destinée à l'Allemagne, finit mystérieusement disparaître. Donc, il y a un problème. Mais l'opposition peut insister sur la transparence. L'opposition pas peut remettre en cause qui le emergency procurement, c'est-à-dire qui bizarre c'était médicaments et équipements médicaux, mais il y a envie de gagner de l'assurance qui pas fini là. Copinage, triage, fraude, et qui tout finit faire dans la transparence. C'est pour ça qu'Orvin Boulel peut dire table tout un document et donne commission d'enquête. Mais le Premier ministre a insisté pour dire qui tout finit faire d'après la loi. Orvin Boulel finit servir le terme rogue traders. Et c'est là que le Premier ministre brandit le nom, et d'ailleurs Zoubia Djoumaï, si j'ai lu le Radio Plus, de Biocom Limited, qui appartenait, dont les directeurs sont les Saïd Hossein, donc frère de l'ancien ministre travailliste Kader Saïd Hossein. Le Premier ministre dit qui Biocom aussi finit un contrat. Il finit dire Kamal Trading finit un contrat, sans mentionner les noms des directeurs. Pravin Jagnat dit qui les directeurs de Kamal Trading, bien proches avec Orvin Boulel, leader de l'opposition. Et Orvin Boulel finit poser une autre question. Il dit qui fait STC finit débourse leurs ans, alors qu'il a l'équipement pas encore gagné. Le Premier ministre il considère qu'il a l'équipement gagné, il n'a pas gagné. Il dit pas si Maurice il fait face à ce problème-là, mais tout ben pays, ben grand pays, finit faire face à ce problème-là. Donc voilà pour résumer Priscilla Sadien. Pravin Jagnat maintenir qu'il y a une situation exceptionnelle, d'urgence, tibizan asté. Pas capable de tout ça en considération que l'opposition peut dire là, tibizan asté. L'opposition il peut dire lui, bizarre, est-ce qu'il tout une fait dans la transparence? Si une fait dans la transparence, rend tout public. Tout ben document public, rend tout ben proceedings public et nomme une commission d'enquête pour faire la lumière sur toute cette affaire. Voilà où en est-on avec cette polémique.
Alors, sinon, quelques questions en ce qui concerne la PMQT Nawaz. Une question du député Farhad Omi, lors mesures budgétaires proposant à un étranger le passeport mauricien contre une contribution non remboursable de 500 000 $, donc au Mauritius Sovereign Fund. Donc, c'est une précision qui finit apportée en fait par le Premier ministre, non 1 million $, comme annoncé par le député Farhad Omi.
Oui, Farhad Omi, c'est la deuxième fois qu'il a erré dans libellé sur une question. La dernière fois, il fait état de saisie de héroïne dans le pot, alors que c'était cocaïne. Et cette fois-ci, il fait un erreur au chiffre, 1 million $. Donc, en fait, c'est 500 000 $. Une mesure qui est annoncée dans le budget 2018-2019. J'ai envie qu'on ait où en est-on avec cette mesure qui est annoncée. Et la Première ministre Priscilla peut dire qui, dans le dernier budget qui Renganadien Padeatif fin présenté, fin annonce une nouvelle stratégie par rapport à ben étranger, ben investisseurs étrangers. Donc, nous comprenons entre les lignes qui peut-être sa mesure concernant le passeport-là fin mettre au frigo, même si le Premier ministre dit après qu'il pense qu'on prend une décision finale.
Maintenant, un assessment, donc. Et sinon, une autre question, cette fois du député Osman Mohamed, l'impact du port du masque lors d'une opération de caméra Safe City Nawaz.
Oui, et la Premier ministre fin concédé qui, quand un citoyen lui met masque, il a un problème de reconnaissance faciale par rapport à une caméra de Safe City. Il dit qui est capable d'impacter partiellement l'identification faciale d'un suspect. Mais il dit qui identification faciale n'est pas c'est le moyen que la police servi pour identifier un dimoun et n'amène les autres moyens comme une empreinte, etc. Et là, Koucha Lobin pose une question supplémentaire. Il dit qui, d'après lui, en Angleterre, dans la majorité des cas, identification faciale qu'il fait n'est pas exacte. C'est une trompe-zoute dans la majeure partie. Je fais une trompe-zoute et il peut dire est-ce qu'il y a Maurice, il fait une étude, une survey, une caméra qui nous a, est-ce qu'il peut opérer comme un besoin, est-ce que l'identification qu'il peut faire est vraiment exacte, genuine. Le Premier ministre peut dire à sa connaissance, puis donc une survey qui finit faire la question.
Voilà donc ce que nous sommes capables de retenir de cette séance de PNQ et de PMQT. Merci à vous, Nawaz Norbex.
Merci aussi.
À suivre le journal de 13h avec Douchila Mansing.